Some coolers keep your CPU cold. The Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, it made the whole industry shiver. This video is brought to you by AMD, Patriot, Antec, Gigabyte, and Progenix. This thing was so good, it made the other AOs dry up like the last woman you spoke to. Think of it as a sleeper car that pulls up next to an M3 competition, crushes him, and then also takes his girl. For the past year, this thing has been the darling of the PC community. Why? Because it's built like a tank, cooled like a blizzard, and it didn't require you to sell a nut to afford it. It was the sensible choice, the smart choice, the my CPU is no longer a nuclear reactor choice. It had a VRM fan on the pump head, which was a stroke of genius, by the way, and a radiator so chunky you could probably use it as a radiator on your car. And now Arctic's gone and made this. Yeah, the GOAT just went pro. Ladies and gentlemen, the new Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 Pro ARGB has arrived. And yeah, it's got RGB because what's a modern PC without some disco? Disco. So what's actually new here? Let's break it down. First up, they've upgraded the fans. The old P12 fans were great, but these are the P12 Pro ARGB fans. So they push more air and have a higher static pressure. In non-tech talk, they're basically angrier fans. You're gonna get better cooling, but yeah, at max speed. I'm sure they'll get a little bit more noisy, but that's the sound of power, guys. But we'll check that in a bit. The classic VRM fan is back, quietly making sure your motherboard's voltage regulators don't get all toasty. Such an excellent feature. It's like having a tiny dedicated air conditioner for your motherboard. How very considerate. The fans and cables are all pre-installed, so it's ready to go right out of the box. It means less time fumbling with cables and more time making dumb jokes on the internet. And for those of you wondering, the radiator is still a beast. At 38mm thick, it's the same chunky boy we all know and love. But with improved fans, it's going to be even more effective at dissipating that heat. Now, before we stick the Allo 3 Pro onto our test bench, we need to talk about our CPU. Currently in here, we have a AMD Ryzen 9600X. Amazing CPU, it's great for what it is. However, I think my refrigerator runs warmer than that CPU. So we need something a tiny bit more hardcore. So I reached out to Progenix and said, hey man, have you got any higher end CPUs lying around you can throw my way for this test? And he said, hold my beer. He got in touch with AMD, and being the champs they are, they sent us a brand new Ryzen 9 9950X for our test platform. You guys are f***ing awesome. Thank you. So pretty. All right, let's see what's in the box. We're greeted with our very iconic block cover from Arctic. This actually houses the VRM fan inside here. And the VRM fan spins from 400 RPM all the way up to 2,500 RPM. For some tasty VRM cooling. Off the bat, the very first thing I've noticed that's different is that the logo is blacked out instead of silver. We have our, I guess, a little accessories box, all our different mounting kits. It supports Intel LGA 1851, LGA 1700, as well as AM5 and AM4. Some screws, some PWM cables, and they give you Arctic MX6. This is a very high quality thermal paste. Aha, inside here we have the new and improved Intel contact frame. Now I believe that this actually shifts the cold plate to a better position on the Intel CPUs and can make up to 10 Celsius difference in performance on Intel CPUs, which is pretty damn awesome. We are not testing this on an Intel platform today, so this doesn't actually count, but it's really cool that they give it to you as well. Arctic does send it to you pre-assembled, which just makes life so much easier. I don't know why some AIO manufacturers don't send them attached. It's really silly and what a pain in the ass. Let's have a look at our block. Beautiful copper plate at the bottom. You have your pump and all your circuitry over here, which connects like so with a magnet. Now this pump does go all the way down to 800 RPM, which is quite low for a pump. I've never seen one go so low before. So it goes from 800 all the way up to 2800 RPM, which is moving quite a bit of water at that point. And as for our chunky radiator, you can already see how thick this boy is. 38 mils thick. The fans are standard 25 mils. These are extremely high quality fans, guys. Not even kidding. This, you can tell this is proper stuff, this. And the previous P12 fans pushed up to 55 CFM through the radiator. Now we're up to 78 CFM through the radiator. Nuts. How they are selling this at this price, I don't know, but they are, and it's awesome. When it comes to connectivity, we have two modes. Easy mode for beginners and nerd mode for elite gamers.
How do you do, fellow kids?
What?
Easy mode is a single cable that plugs into the block and goes to a PWM header. This will control the pump, VRM fan, and radiator fan simultaneously. But for you nerds out there who want more granular control, I'd recommend using the 3-way split option, which gives you an individual control over the pump, VRM fan, and radiator fans. You'll need to have 3 PWM headers relatively close together though to avoid the inevitable spaghetti monster in your case. Alright, now that we've had a look at it, let's install our CPU and see if this bad boy can actually keep that 9950X under control. I'm going to run stock settings for the 9950X, and then I'm going to be enabling PBO with the slight undervolt, which is going to push the CPU to its limits. I'm guessing 250 to 270 watts being dumped into that CPU to reach that 95C threshold or limit of the CPU. That'll give us a good indication of if these coolers can actually bring it down from that 95C where the CPU wants to run. Now before we assemble this, I just want to show you guys something. This is the DX360 by ID Cooling. This is the Liquid Freezer 3 Pro. Have a look at the size of this is already a thick radiator, much thicker than your average radiator. Have a look at that size difference in thickness, this being the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3. I think we're in for a treat, boys. Okay, let's install it. Installation is super simple, requiring only 4 real steps. First up is lathering your CPU with some tasty MX6. Then removing the stock AM5 brackets and installing the ones supplied by using the 4 standoffs and then placing the retention brackets on top of that, screwing them to the motherboard. Then it's as simple as mounting your AIO to the brackets, remembering to apply even pressure to each side as you screw it down. And then lastly, plugging in your desired single pin or 3-pin controller cable. So on to our testing. At stock settings on our 9950X, the CPU power draw is capped at 200 watts, which sees our CPU barely hitting over 66 degrees at 5 GHz on all cores on a Cinebench R23 run. And 'tis bitter tickle for the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3 Pro. Any semi-decent air cooler will keep the CPU under control at stock settings, but where the Freezer 3 Pro really shines is when you put the hammer down, by enabling Precision Boost Overdrive. I've set the PBO limits to motherboard, an increased boost clock of 200 MHz, and set the curve optimizer to a very tame negative 15 millivolts, which will crank the CPU all the way to the moon. Now we're cooking, boys. With the CPU now pulling 280 watts at 5.4 GHz on all cores, the Liquid Freezer 3 is proving its worth by dropping the temperature of the 9950X from its balmy 95C limit down to 87. Granted, those P12 Pro fans were screaming at me, but the Cinebench benchmark is also an unrealistic example of sustained workload. Let's talk about these fans real quick. Using the anemometer, at idle, it barely even reads airflow through the radiator. Yet somehow, through witchcraft or sorcery, the CPU is still idling around 40C at an ambient temperature of about 18 degrees Celsius, which for a 16-core processor ain't bad, considering that the PC is now quieter than the noise floor of the room. Looking at our smoke test at idle, you can see that she's keeping the airflow moving, and at good volumes too. However, when you unleash those P12 Pros, they make noise, but they also suck all the air out of the room. On the anemometer, we're getting a reading of close to 55 CFM coming out the back of the radiator, which is huge. That's more airflow than some case fans actually move directly without any obstruction. Yeah, sure, they get loud, hitting a reading of 55 decibels from about 1.5 feet away, but again, it's unlikely they will ever run at this kind of speed for prolonged periods. But it's nice to know they can and will keep your CPU cool. With the smoke tests, I mean, need I say more? Unless I moved the fog machine further away, one single fan sucked up all the smoke before the others got a chance to get a whiff. The fan in the block, well, like its predecessor, it just works at keeping the VRMs at a very decent temperature. It actually feels like Arctic's competing against themselves at this point. I don't even know what to say. This cooler is remarkable. They've taken a perfectly winning design that works beautifully and has become somewhat of a benchmark in the world of CPU cooling, and they've made it better. Now I know I'm not comparing directly to the original, but I can tell you I've done my research And this thing is keeping a 9950X from hitting 95 degrees Celsius. To me, that's enough to give this thing a gold star, a pat on the back, and maybe even a reach around.
What did he say?
These new P12 Pro fans are the star of the show though, and are flippin' awesome. At low RPM, they are silent and keep the CPU as cool as it needs to be. But when you crank them up, they may sound like a jet engine taking off. The amount of air being totally smashed through this radiator will even make your mom blush. And the word Pro, it gets thrown around a lot, but this deserves the moniker of the Pro, and even the Ultra and the Max. You're getting incredible thermal results, MX6 paste with it, you're getting some disco lights if you're into that, getting super low RPM fans that ramp up the Spitfire level power, you're getting a 6-year warranty, all at a really competitive price. Now, this can't all be rainbows and inappropriate touching. There must be something negative I can say about it. I may or may not be looking for something to moan about. You can't rotate the block cover. They're happy now. Obviously, I'm going to say I highly recommend this cooler. So much so that my friends at Lunatech may or may not be getting a Liquid Freezer 3 Pro box returned to them with some scented candles and a card in place of the cooler. A huge thanks to AMD for supplying the 9950X that really allowed us to push this cooler to its max. A huge shout out to Lunatech for supplying the cooler for us to gush over. Please like if you're hyped, subscribe to the channel because this is just the beginning. The folks at Lunatech sent me a ton of gear and I can't wait to share it with all of you guys and possibly the one girl who watches this channel. Stay cool guys and one girl. See you soon. Okay, thanks, bye.